vote. The elderly, the pregnant women were not given priority to vote. I, in 3% of polling stations, observed indelible ink was not checked on the voters before allowing them to cast their vote. J, at 97% of the polling stations observed, voting was free from usual irregularities. K, voting proceeded in an orderly manner at 95% of the polling stations observed. L, ballot boxes did not remain locked and or sealed at 2% of the polling boxes that were observed. M, as a result of the excessive delays in the opening of polling stations in Harare and Bulawayo provinces, at least 36% of the voting stations observed did not close at the scheduled closing of 19 hours, while some had not even opened by that time. It was announced that voting would be extended to proceed into 24th August 2023 to compensate for the late opening. And N, in previous stakeholder consultations, a shadowy organization that I've already referred to as Forever Associate Zimbabwe was accused of conducting a countrywide exercise of electoral intimidation. Our observers confirmed the existence of this group, as its officials or agents were easily identifiable at some polling stations as they were dressed in regalia emblazoned with the FAR's name and were accredited electoral local observers. These and other unidentified persons who were not polling officials were also observed taking down the voters' names before they cast their votes. In some areas, voters were intimidated by the actions of these individuals. Or the mission observed the closing on the vote counting processes. A proper analysis of these two processes shall be provided in the final SEOM report. Number 4, recommended improvements in the electoral process. At this juncture, allow me to recall that SEOM is continuing the process of electoral observation in the post-election phase. As such, the mission will not be rendering comprehensive recommendations and detailed qualifications of the election at this stage. However, the mission has observed the following areas of the electoral process and system that relevant stakeholders may wish to consider improving. Number 1, access to the voters' roll. In order to improve perceptions amongst the public, political parties and candidates, ZEC is advised to strictly follow the provisions of the Constitution on transparency, access to information, and timely avail the voters' roll in accordance with the stipulations under the Electoral Act. 2, nomination fees. In order to enhance the openness and inclusivity of the political process, ZEC is urged to engage with all stakeholders in the process of revising nomination fees for the candidates and attempt to benchmark the revised fees in the context of the SADC region and Zimbabwe's economic realities. 3, state-owned media coverage. The relevant media regulatory authorities are urged to ensure the implementation of measures that require impartiality in the coverage of political events by state-owned media. And 4, voting materials. ZEC is urged to strengthen transparency in the procurement process and delivery of all voting materials, including ballot papers, and put in place a monitoring system that includes the participation and verification by electoral stakeholders. In addition, there is need for the Electoral Commission or Electoral Act to be revised to put in place clear frameworks and timeframes within which these processes should be completed. Number 5, participation of women. Effective and practical measures should now be put in place at the earliest sitting of the next parliament to enhance the equal participation of women as candidates in electoral processes. In conclusion, the mission observed that the pre-election and voting phases on 23rd to the 24th August 2023 harmonized elections were peaceful and calm. However, for reasons outlined above in this report, the mission noted that some aspects of the harmonized elections fell short of the requirements of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the Electoral Act, and the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections of 2021. The mission commends the people of Zimbabwe for maintaining a peaceful political environment during the pre-election period and on voting day itself. The mission will release its final report after the validation and proclamation of final results, as provided for in the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. The final report will be shared with the ZEC and all stakeholders. In terms of the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections, our long-term observers will remain on the ground to continue with the post-election observation until the 1st of September 2023. The SEOM shall return at an appropriate time to undertake a post-election review to determine the extent to which the recommendations of SEOM have been implemented and the nature of the support, if any, that the member state holding elections may require from SADC region to implement these proposals. In the event of any electoral disputes, the mission appeals to all contestants to channel their concerns through established legal procedures and processes. The mission urges all political parties and the people of Zimbabwe and all the stakeholders to allow the ZEC to announce the final results as legally mandated. May God bless Zimbabwe. May God bless SADC. May God bless Africa. Merci beaucoup. Obrigado, asante sana, tatenda. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the statement. Kindly note, distinguished invited guests and Your Excellencies, that all these three statements will be availed to anyone that would like a copy just at the entrance, but after delivery of all statements. I would now like to call to invite His Excellency, Mr. Goodluck Jonathan, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and head of mission of the African Union, COMESA, to come and give their statement. Your Excellency.
His Excellency, Dr. Neves Mumba, the head of SADC mission, the Excellencies, heads of other observation missions here with us, the Excellencies, former heads of governments, the Excellencies, ambassadors or heads of missions are here with us or their representatives, members of the civil society. Let me also appreciate, I believe, the presence of ZEC officials that are here with us to listen to us, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This is the AU Commercial Election Observation Mission to the 23rd August 2023 harmonized elections in Zimbabwe. The preliminary statement presented in Harare, 25th August 2023. Detailed and final report will come in 2 months' time, except that the litigation process takes a little longer period. Introduction. Following the invitation by the government of the Republic of Zimbabwe to observe the 23rd August 2023 harmonized elections, the African Union, AU, and the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, deployed a short-term election observation mission from 16th to 29th August 2023. The mission comprises of 82 short-term observers from 29 countries across Africa and is led by His Excellency Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, former President of the Republic of Nigeria, deputized by Right Honorable Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, and a member of the COMESA Committee of the Elders. The two were supported by His Excellency Domitien Ndayizeye, former President of the Republic of Burundi and Chairperson of the African Union Panel of the Wise. His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, AU Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, and Her Excellency Celeste Kapwepwe, Secretary General of COMESA. The joint AU COMESA election observation mission was preceded by the deployment of a joint technical pre-election assessment mission from 3rd to 7th July 2023. The pre-election assessment mission assessed the pre-election environment and general level of preparedness for various elections stakeholders. The findings of the pre-election assessment guided the deployment of the short-term observers and stakeholders' engagement. The objectives of the joint AU COMESA mission are twofold. First, to assess the technical compliance of the 2023 electoral process in line with AU and COMESA principles and normative framework and other international obligations and standards for democratic elections, as well as Zimbabwe's national legal framework. Secondly, to ascertain that the environment was peaceful for the conduct of democratic elections and acceptance of the electoral act. The observers to orient them organize elections comprised of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment Act 2023, the Electoral Act, Chapter 213, and various regulations. Other substantive and operational laws, including provisions and procedures for contesting elections and determination of election petitions, are exemplified in the Constitutional Court Act, Constitutional Court Rules, Supreme Court Act, Supreme Court Rules, High Court Act, High Court Rules, and the Electoral Court Rules. The nation also notes that Zimbabwe has taken important steps in aligning its legal framework in line with its international and regional obligations. The mission commends Zimbabwe for ratifying the Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance. Electoral system. Zimbabwe operates a hybrid electoral system that combines the first-past-the-post system and the proportional representation system, a multi-party electoral system. The first-past-the-post is adopted for elections for the lower house of parliament, the National Assembly, and for local authority elections. The proportional representative system applies for the selection of 16 members of the Senate, 16 members of the National Assembly, all of whom must be women, and for the provincial councils in the 8 non-metropolitan provinces. The Electoral Act provides for detailed formula for allocation of 6 eligible parties. To qualify, the party must have filed its party nominations list during the nomination court proceedings, otherwise it loses eligibility to seat to seats and supervise election to the office of president and the parliament, elections of provincial and metropolitan councils and the governing bodies of local authorities, and elections of members of the National Council of Chiefs established by Section 1. Act. By Section the 200 General Notice 1131 of 2023. Polling officials were drawn from ZEC Secretariat and seconded by civil servants. Concerns were raised that some officials were seconded from the army, and hence the impartiality of the polling officials was in doubt. The mission notes the establishment of an observer accreditation committee tasked with responsibility of considering and approving applications for accreditation from individuals, institutions, and organizations. Accreditation of observers commences on the 20th of June 2023. The mission notes ZEC's confirmation that the government will provided the entire budget for the election. On 21st August 2023, ZEC reported that 98% of all preparations were done and election materials had already been delivered to the various areas. However, on election day, the mission observed late opening of some polling stations. The delay was attributed to late delivery of ballot papers for the local authority elections. The mission further notes that there seems to have been a gap in timely communication of the situation to relevant stakeholders, especially political parties and candidates, which led to speculations and anxiety among politics. Delimitation. The Constitution of Zimbabwe, in Section 160, Sub 1 and 2, provides for the number of constituencies and wards, while Section 161 outlines the delimitation process. The Electoral Act provides further guidance on the process and the factor to be considered. The boundaries delimitation process started in 2021 and was concluded on 21st February 2023 with the gazettes of the final delimitation report. The report was, however, challenged in court, but the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe dismissed the case. The 2023 harmonized elections have been conducted in the 2210 constituencies on 1,970 wards based on the new constituency and ward boundaries. The mission's interaction with civil society political actors revealed that concerns persist regarding the process and outcome of the delimitation exercise. These included allegations of inadequate consultation with stakeholders, despite ZEC's assertion that there were consultations at all levels. The use of inaccurate population figures, gerrymandering in some areas to produce predetermined election results, and limited civic education on the delimitation process. Voter registration. Section 17A of Electoral Act, Chapter 2, Sub 13 provides for the conduct of continuous voter registration by ZEC, in addition to ZEC periodic conduct in possession of either a national identity card or a valid Zimbabwean passport, and have his or her details of residents to 6,619,690 voters who wish to transfer to other electoral areas could do so during such registration process. The provisional voters register was displayed for public inspection from 27 to 31st May 2023. Additionally, voters could verify their registration status on their mobile phone using USSD code *265# or through ZEC website. However, there were concerns raised by some stakeholders and voters on election day that the USSD code was not always working. The mission takes note of ZEC's effort to reach out and register as many eligible voters as possible. This effort was appreciated by some stakeholders the mission interacted with, but also raised some issues of concern as follows. A, that many potential eligible voters were left out due to lack of national registration cards, which is one of the requirements for registration as a voter. The claim that the process of obtaining the national identification card was not transparent in some areas in the country. B, failure to open the review of the voters' roll to political parties as a confidence-building measure. C, the limited time of only 5 days allocated to voters to check their registration status. D, late release of the voters' roll to political parties, candidates, and other interested stakeholders. E, high fee required to be paid for those wishing to obtain a copy of the register. F, limited communication by ZEC to its stakeholders regarding the process and state of the voters' register. Civic and voter education. Chapter 12, Section 239 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe mandates ZEC to conduct, supervise, and accredit voter education services providers. The mission acknowledges the importance of civic and voter education to conscientiously understand their rights, for citizens to understand their rights, the roles and obligations in the electoral process, and commend the efforts made by the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission through mainstreaming media and social media to reach out and all citizens to register and participate in the election. However, the mission notes the concern from stakeholders, particularly civil society organizations, concerning the delay in accreditation for voter education. Most CSOs receive their accreditation certificates, which are valid for 1 year in August 2023, just a few weeks before election. As a result, CSOs could not fundraise to conduct meaningful voters' education. And if for those ones who even have the funds, the time was not enough for them to go to the interland to conduct voters' education. Political party registration and candidates nomination. Following President Mnangagwa proclamation 4th of 2021 on the election date, the nomination court on 21st June 2023 approved 5,565 candidates for the 23 August harmonized elections. 11 candidates were approved for the presidential election, 637 candidates from 14 political parties, and 67 independent candidates for the National Assembly elections, and 4,816 candidates from 42 political parties, and 272 independent candidates for the local government elections, of which 91 are contesting unopposed. The mission notes the concerns raised by stakeholders on the high increase of nomination fees for all levels of election. There has been for the presidential nomination that was raised from $1,000 to $20,000. This high increase emphasized eligible contenders, particularly from underrepresented groups like women and people that are physically challenged. The mission further notes the notification by the Zimbabwe High Court of the candidacy of one of the prospective presidential candidates and the withdrawal of the MDC presidential candidate. Though his name still operated, his name was still on the ballot paper. Election campaign. So three instruments, 87 of 2023 elections. Campaigns began from the day of proclamation up to 24 hours before voting began, as contained in Section 9.1 of the 4th Schedule, Section 160A of the Electoral Act, Chapter 2, Sub 13. Political parties, candidates, election agents, and supporters are required to abide by the Electoral Code of Conduct for political parties and candidates as contained in the 4th Schedule of the Electoral Act. Any party or candidate can hold a campaign in public within the periods subject to then notifying and getting approval to proceed from the responsible local authority and the police in charge of the area in terms of the time and venue of the campaign. While the nation appreciates the largely peaceful campaigns, some stakeholders consulted highlighted serious concerns regarding the enacted maintenance of peace and order act that repeals the Public Order and Security Act normally proposed. Stakeholders reported that the new act was being used to violate some of the fundamental freedoms. Opposition political parties and candidates that were consulted highlighted the selective and disproportionate applications of the Maintenance or Peace and Order Act by the Zimbabwe Republic Police to limit large-scale campaign rallies by the opposition. Inclusion in the electoral processes, the gender factor. The Constitution and the Electoral Act provide the framework for the exercise and protection of Zimbabwean women's political rights to participate and represent in line with international and regional benchmarks. Especially Section 56 of the Constitution guarantees the fundamental principle of gender equality and non-discrimination, while Section 57 safeguards women's rights to vote and to stand for election for public office. Furthermore, Section 3 of the Electoral Act upholds the right to every citizen to participate in government directly or through freely choosing representatives without distinction on the grounds of gender. The women's quota in Parliament adopted in 2013 and set to expire in 2023 was extended by 2 more electoral cycles. The extension of the women's quota is highly commendable. This positive step is in line with the spirit of the recommendations of the 2018 AU Election Observation Mission report on the need to put in place mechanisms to increase women participation in the electoral process, particularly as candidates. However, out of 11 presidential candidates, only 1 woman vied for the presidency compared to the 4 female presidential hopefuls in 2018 elections. Women representation in parliamentary election candidates stands at 11% out of a total of 704 candidates and at 14% out of 5,088 local government election candidates. Notwithstanding their affirmative action, the 2023 election recorded a lower number of female candidates compared to the 2018 elections, which witnessed a participation of 14.4% female parliamentary election candidates and 17% female local authority election candidates. Reduction in the number of female contestants has been attributed by stakeholders to the high nomination fee for presidential candidates and low political representation of women in political parties hierarchy. The low participation of women as candidates undermines Zimbabwe's constitutional aspiration and international and regional commitment towards gender equality. Reported cases of gender-based violence on social media were brought to the attention of the nation by some stakeholders. Youth. Section 20 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe provides for effective political participation of youth. The nation also commends Zimbabwe for the adoption of the youth quota in the elective National Assembly. This affirmative action for increased youth representation in political governance is in line with its constitutional requirements and African Charter on democracy, elections, and governance. People living with disabilities. Section 56 of the Constitution proclaims the right of every person to equal treatment and non-discrimination based on disability. The mission regrettably notes that the number of senatorial seats allocated to persons living with disability remains unchanged since the 2018 election, despite renewed calls made by organizations advocating for increased political representation of people living with disabilities in decision-making bodies. The media environment. Section 61 of Zimbabwe's Constitution guarantees freedom of expression and media as well as access to information. Media stakeholders such as the Zimbabwean chapter of the Media Institute of South Africa claims that the regulatory environment in this country continues to be defined by restrictive and inhibitive media policies and laws, even years after the adoption of the 2013 Constitution, which contains the universally acceptable Bill of Rights, with no meaningful shift in the country's statutory media regulation, legislation, and policies to make these constitutional gains a reality. Furthermore, while public broadcasters shall afford all political parties and independent candidates contesting an election free access to their broadcasting services, as may be prescribed as provided for in Section 160G of the Electoral Act, Chapter 2, Sub 13. Some stakeholders the nation interacted with, however, raised concerns about unequal access to state broadcasting houses. Security context. The management of security during election is guided by the Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment Act 2023, the Maintenance of Peace and Order Act 2019, Chapter 11, Sub 23, the Police Act, Chapter 11, Sub 10, and the Electoral Amendment Act, Chapter 2, Sub 13, and the regulations. The mission notes that the security environment ahead of the 2023 harmonized election remained largely peaceful and calm. The majority of stakeholders the mission interacted with noted a significant reduction in violence compared to previous elections. Section 219 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe clearly lays out the function of the police service, which, whilst Part 2 of the Maintenance of Peace and Order Act regulates the management of public gatherings by the police service. The mission notes the positive security preparation for the election. This includes establishing a specialized unit for the harmonized election development development of a booklet on the code of conduct for its officers during election. In addition, the Zimbabwe Republic Police leadership reported that deployment of police officers and prison officers to complement police were adequate, between 3 to 5 per polling station, to secure the polling. Special support units were deployed throughout to manage any potential unrest. The signing of peace pledges by political parties, the ZANU-PF, the CCC, and MDC was noted as very important for the political environment. In addition, the mission noted constant peace messages by the president, which enhanced confidence that the 23 August election will be peaceful. The mission notes the concern of stakeholders on the presence of Forever Association Zimbabwe FAZ. The group is accused of intimidating citizens, especially in the rural areas, to vote in a particular way. The mission could not verify the allegations. However, interactions with the Zimbabwe Republic Police confirmed the existence of such group. The role of civil society organizations. The mission appreciates the role of civil society organizations and takes note of the achievements they have made so far. CSOs have been instrumental in advancing peace messages, providing voter education despite the challenges of delayed accreditation, and conducting citizens' election observation. The mission notes the concerns expressed by CSOs on the far-reaching implications of the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Amendment Act in reducing the democratic space for far beyond what they expect. Despite the challenges expressed regarding accreditation, the mission notes that 3,572 citizens observers were accredited for the 2023 harmonized election. However, the accreditation fee of $10 for each observer and a requirement to appear in person at the accreditation centers were noted as impediment factors to a number of observers that the CSOs wanted to deploy for the election. The mission is deeply concerned about the arrest of 39 civil society actors and the confiscation of computers and documents and other equipment that CSOs claim that were being used for their work. And we believe and wish that this matter be dealt with very quickly. Electoral disputes resolution. In Zimbabwe, electoral disputes are mainly arbitrated in the different courts as provided for in the legal instrument governing elections. The mission notes that an alternative dispute resolution mechanism has been established through the multi-party liaison committee at various levels, national, provincial, and constituency. The committees were established to handle electoral disputes that might arise in line with Section 160B of the Electoral Act and are chaired by ZEC. Presidential candidates' disputes will be handled by the National Multi-Party Liaison Committee. However, some stakeholders reported that since inauguration, the committees have largely remained inactive. Other initiatives included setting up of a media monitoring committee and compliance with the Electoral Act and appointment of special police liaison officer to investigate cases related to electoral violence. Each of the 10 provinces were assigned 2 special police liaison officers. Election day observation, maybe that's the curtain now. What happens on the 23rd to /34? The AUEOM COMESA Electoral Observation Mission deployed 33 short-term observer teams in the 10 provinces across the country where they observed opening, voting, closing, and counting procedures on the 23rd of August 2023. This statement also reflects preliminary findings made by observers teams in selected wards where voting was extended till 24th August 2023. The mission visited a total of 566 polling stations, of which 75%, as 424, were in urban and 25%, 142, in rural areas. The polling atmosphere The AU COMESA team noted that the atmosphere on election day was generally peaceful and calm, with no incidents of violence witnessed, although long queues were observed up to the mid-afternoon of that day of the voting. They were largely orderly, except in a few isolated cases where the crowd became a bit agitated because of the delay in the opening of polling stations, particularly in Harare and Bulawayo areas. Accessibility to polling stations. The AU commercial team noted that 94% of polling stations visited were easily accessible to all the voters. Accessibility was challenged in a few instances because polling stations grounds were not leveled or flattened appropriately, and somehow, in some cases, the crowd was not too cooperative. Opening of polling. The AU commercial team observed opening procedures at 35 polling stations across all the 10 provinces. The mission noted that 81% of these polling stations visited open at 7 a.m., the legally stipulated time. There were queues outside. So 97% of polling stations visited before and during the period. The mission noted delays in opening of polling stations, particularly in Harare and Bulawayo areas, which was largely due to delays in the distribution of local authority ballots. This was confirmed by the ZEC in its statement on 23rd August, based on where the observers observed 65% of the polling stations visited opened on time, while 35% opened late up to 10 p.m. Polling staff. The AU commercial team observed, noted an average of 8 polling staff in every station, including the presiding officer. In all polling stations visited, the polling staff demonstrated adequate levels of professionalism, competence, understanding of their roles and responsibilities, adherence to procedures, and a sense of commitment in all the polling stations visited. Polling procedures. There was no campaign materials or campaigning near the polling stations visited by our team. Priority was given to voters, including the elderly persons with disabilities and expectant and nursing mothers, and assistance was also provided to voters who required such support in all the stations. In 30% of stations visited, observer teams witnessed some voters being turned away, and in most cases, this was either because of not having the correct voter identification or voters presenting themselves at the wrong polling stations. In such cases, observers confirmed that most voters were redirected to the right voting stations. The team also noted that voting proceeded uninterrupted in all the polling stations visited throughout the day, throughout the one of voting. The secrecy of the vote was guaranteed by the appropriate layout of polling stations visited, which ensures the privacy of the ballot. Furthermore, the mission also noted that postal ballots were opened, verified, and stamped by the presiding officer, which could have compromised the secrecy of the ballot in polling stations where this procedure was observed. Political party candidates, agents, and observers. There was systematic presence of party agents in all the stations visited. ZANU-PF and CCC were represented in all the stations observed by the mission. Representation of independent candidates agent was also noted in certain polling stations. The AU COMESA team noted that international observers, groups, and citizens observers were granted access to all the polling stations visited. In a few stations visited, the mission also noted the presence of Forever Association Zimbabwe, FAZ, which in certain cases led to confrontation with the voters. Regrettably, the mission was informed of the Zimbabwe Republic Police raid on the Zimbabwe Electoral Support Network offices in Harare, seizure of material-related equipment, and the arrest of leaders of these groups and the Election Resource Center. The mission is concerned about such action, which have the potential of undermining the peace and integrity of the process. Participation of women. The team noted the high participation of women on election day. Women were represented as election officials by 72%, political parties and candidates, agents at 54%, and citizens observers 51% in all polling stations visited. The mission also observed the strong presence of women as voters and security agents. A visible presence of security personnel were noted inside and outside all the polling stations visited, from opening to closing of the one of the polls. Their presence was observed to be non-intrusive and professional in all stations visited. Closing of polls and counting. The AU COMESA team observed the closing process in 28 polling stations, 86% being in urban areas and 14% in rural areas. 75% of polling stations visited closed at the 7 p.m., the globally stipulated time. The mission observed that polling stations that opened late made up for the delays by increasing the time up to 12 midnight. The mission was pleased that the Electoral Commission reaffirmed in a press communique its commitment to comply with the regulations and to ensure that affected voters were granted the opportunity to exercise their constitutional right to vote. The mission observed that there were voters in the queue at the closing of polls in certain polling stations visited on the 23rd August. All voters in the queue at the time were allowed to vote. The mission was also informed that polling stations that opened late made up for the delay in line with the law, which prescribed that voting must carry on for 12 hours. The mission was pleased that the Electoral Commission reaffirmed in a press communique its commitment to comply with the regulation and to ensuring that affected voters were granted the opportunity to exercise their constitutional right to vote. All the necessary documentation was completed and results were posted on the polling stations visited. The AU COMESA mission was informed of a proclamation issued in the evening of 23rd August, which extended voting till 24th August in the wards affected by late distribution of ballots. The mission was also informed that voting would run on 24th August from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The mission is of the view that the extension of voting is a positive measure that sought to safeguard the rights of all affected voters, including those who may have been disenfranchised as a result of the long wait during the first day of voting. Conclusion. The AU COMESA Election Observation Mission observed that the 2023 harmonized elections were conducted up to the counting process in a generally peaceful and transparent manner, despite logistic challenges with the availability and distribution of local authority ballot papers in some areas. The mission continues to observe the tallying process and will issue a comprehensive report within 2 months. The AU COMESA team commends the people of Zimbabwe for their patience, resilience, and commitment to express their will at the polls. As the country awaits the announcement of results by ZEC, the mission urges all stakeholders to remain committed to the rule of law and democratic principles until the conclusion of the process. The mission further encourages any aggrieved party to use legally established channels to seek redress. Recommendations. Based on the findings, the mission offers the following preliminary recommendations for consideration in improving future election processes in the country. Recommendations to the government. A. Expedite the resolution of the emerging issues relating to the arrest and detention of some civil society actors within the merits of the law. B. Exempt local observers from paying accreditation fee in line with the international best practice. C. Review the legal framework to increase representation of persons living with disability in elective positions. D. Revise the legal framework to include bringing provisions that compel political parties to increase the representation of women on National Assembly candidate lists. And A. Domesticate, implement, and report on the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, the ZEC. Enhance the enforcement of the Electoral Code of Conduct to address issues relating to intimidation of voters by political party officials. Open the review of the voters' role to political parties as a way of building confidence among the stakeholders. Consider making the election calendar flexible to accommodate emerging issues, including court cases and communication, and communicate the same to electoral stakeholders in a timely manner. Provide regular updates to the public throughout the electoral process, particularly on election day. Ensure effective communication between the ZEC headquarters and polling officials to help address logistics challenges on election day. To review the procedures on postal voting to enhance the secrecy and transparency of the process. Recruit polling officials outside the civil service and the military, since they are perceived to be pro-government. Finalize the voters' register on time and avail it to stakeholders in line with the provision of the Electoral Act in order to enhance transparency. Accredit CSOs on time to provide voter education throughout the entire electoral cycle. Further decentralize the accreditation process for citizens observers. Ensure that polling stations are accessible to persons living with disabilities and elderly people. Match the color of the lid of the ballot boxes with the color of ballot papers to speed up the voting process. To political parties, to ensure that political party supporters and candidates abide by the Electoral Code of Conduct. Strengthen internal party democracy to promote more inclusive and competitive selection of candidates during primaries. Implement internal voluntary gender quota to strengthen the role of women, youth, and persons living with disabilities in political party leadership positions towards increased representation in the national and local elections. stop the activities of affiliate organizations on election day. The civil society organizations, the CSOs, continue advocating for key legal and electoral reforms, including participation in elections, promote increased participation of women, youth, and persons living with disability in elective bodies and leadership positions in political parties, further promote transparency and accountability in the management of the electoral process to deepen democratic credentials of Zimbabwe, issued in Harare, Zimbabwe on 25th August 2022. Thank you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for that comprehensive statement on behalf of the AU COMESA mission. Our last statement will be delivered by the Electoral Commission's Forum of SADC, and the statement will be delivered by Mr. Mpasa Mokochane, who is the chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission of Lesotho and also head of mission of the Electoral Commission's Forum of SADC. So you have the floor.
Master of Ceremony, allow me to align myself with the protocol already established. The Electoral Forum of SADC countries, commonly known as ECF-SADC Observer Mission, comprise the electoral management bodies, EMBs, of the SADC member states. The mandate of ECF-SADC is to strengthen cooperation among electoral commissions and to promote for credible and transparent election in the SADC region. The ECF-SADC mission for the harmonized election in Zimbabwe deployed 38 observers from 10 electoral commissions from SADC countries, namely Angola, Botswana, Democratic Republic of Congo, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, South Africa, Zambia, and Zanzibar. The mission commenced its work on the 13th of August 2023. The preliminary statement will be available to this audience and shall have details of the following: the introduction, the background, mandate of the ECF Electoral Observation Mission, guiding principle, observation methodology, pre-election, election and post-election activities. It will, however, not include the tabulated results. The purpose of this presentation for release of statement by the International Observation Mission is to give a summary of which I'm going to present. And the summary will focus on the following: the preliminary findings, the election phase, and the areas for improvement. The preliminary findings are as follows. The state of preparedness by Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. The mission interacted with the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to gather information related to the 2023 harmonized election and assess its state of readiness. The Commission confirmed its readiness to the conduct of the harmonized elections, highlighting challenges they faced in the build-up to these elections. Pre-election issue raised by the stakeholders in the 2023 election. There was an expressed indication of confidence in SADC's level of preparedness to conduct election raised by the participants. The stakeholders commended the successful implementation of the review of and the delimitation of the constituency and ward boundaries, which were considered to be long overdue. The mission was informed that SEC successfully conducted a mobile voter registration exercise. However, there were concerns about how the voter registration was managed, in that in most areas, the registration centers were difficult to access due to long distances. SEC was commended by stakeholders engaged for the quality of the voter education curriculum and quality of packaging of voter information, which showed significant improvement. Stakeholders were of the view that in the build-up to elections, there was a lack of or a limited collaboration with civil society organizations, which, when compared to the previous elections. The meeting was informed that the electoral environment surrounding conduct of the campaign was generally peaceful and calm. Stakeholders aligned that there was unbalanced coverage of the electoral campaign messages, activities, and news by the public broadcasters. It was generally observed that SEC was not proactive, providing important information relating to the preparation for the conduct of elections. Stakeholders expressed general dissatisfaction in the handling and outcomes of the electoral law reform efforts. The nomination fees for the 2023 harmonized elections were described as exorbitant for ordinary citizens to afford. Media practitioners advised that the requirements and associated accreditation fees pose a challenge to the media coverage of electoral activities. The mission's findings. There were contrasting views whether SEC had strategies to deal with misinformation or disinformation on electoral-related matters that were circulated on the social media. SEC had made strides to implement administrative reforms based on the election observers' recommendation from the 2018 harmonized election. There was perceived public mistrust in SEC. The lack of the popularization of the delimitation report outcome by SEC, which had potential to affect the voter turnout. The constitutional provisions of the representation of women and youth in electoral process was highly regarded. Now let's come to polling day observation in summary. Some stations visited opened on time, and broadly, the opening procedure were followed, where the mission observed. However, some of the polling stations visited by the team failed to open at all. This was observed in polling stations in parts of Harare, Manicaland, and in Bulawayo province. The reason cited for the late opening was non-availability of local authority election ballot papers. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission issued a statement on the delayed opening of polling stations and condition for extending the polls. Due to the delayed opening of the polling station, the mission noted that the closing of polls would not happen in a uniform manner. It was noted that there were stations that only opened as late as 21 hours. Despite the challenge related to the late opening of the polling station generally, polling took place in a peaceful and secure environment. The key recommendations. The mission noted that the ECF-SADC made the recommendation during the July 2018 harmonized election and during its pre-election assessment mission in May 2023. The recommendations made at the time are still applicable to this particular election. This included the following thematic areas: communication, the voters' role, and the logistics. The ECF-SADC mission make the following key recommendation to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. A, the ZEC needs to pursue the legal reforms that are necessary to minimize the risk that arises from the following operation. This includes, but not limited to, increase the inspection period for the voters' roll and make the voters' roll available at polling stations ahead of polling day. Determine a set period for the conclusion of appeal processes from the nomination of candidates, especially for the local authority elections. The introduction of technology to enhance efficiency in the electoral process, including the result management. B, the ZEC should strive to improve the implementation of its communication strategy to foster transparency, accountability, and facilitate public trust in the Commission. C, the ZEC should address the issues raised related to selective accreditation of observers and the dual accreditation of media practitioners. D, the limitation process should be conducted in a more timely manner in order to ensure that it does not negatively impact preparation for the electoral process. Furthermore, ZEC should make the process more conclusive or consultative and open to public participation. E, the ZEC should provide clear, regular updates to the electorate and stakeholders during polling day and in the period up the announcement of results. In conclusion, the 2023 harmonized elections were conducted within a context shaped by the legal framework, which largely constrained the technical and operational aspect of the Z network. The mission, however, acknowledged the efforts of the ZEC to propose reforms that are not adopted ahead of the 2023 elections. The mission congratulates the people of Zimbabwe on the manner in which they conducted themselves throughout the electoral period, despite the logistical challenge experienced during the election process. The contesting political parties and their supporters are commended for their spirit of tolerance during the electoral period. As the electoral process has not concluded, the people of Zimbabwe are encouraged to use the available legal means should they not be satisfied with the election outcome. Furthermore, ECF-SADC encourages the people of Zimbabwe to continue to remain tolerant and peaceful in the manner that they conduct themselves. I thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the statement for ESF-SADC countries. Before we move on to the next session of our program, I would just like to announce that other election observation missions will present their statements this afternoon at the Holiday Inn. And that is the Commonwealth, the European Union, and the Cara Center. I would now like to call my colleague, Mr. Mafiri, to come and facilitate the Q&A session. Mr. Mafiri, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Annette. Good afternoon, everyone. Now we have come to the end of the presentation of the statement. It's now time for questions and answers from the public and members of the media. Please raise your hand. Tell us who you are, your name, the name of the media house, but also indicate where you are directing your question, whether to the joint AU COMESA, SEOM, or the ECF-SADC. In that order. Please raise your hand. I'll take a set of 3 questions to the beginning, then I'll take another 3 more thereafter. Thank you. That is one hand there. Number 2. 2 there. Number 3. Number 3 at the back there, in that order. Number 1 here, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Yvonne Uchaka. I'm a freelance journalist. Given your assessment of the environment, would you consider, this is coming to the...
Apologies. Please indicate your name, the media company, you have said it, but also indicate where the question you are directing to which mission.
Thank you very much. My name is Yvonne Uchaka. I am a freelance journalist. My question is directed to the 3 observer missions. Considering all that you have said concerning the electoral environment pre and during the election, would you consider these elections to be credible? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your hand was up here, sir.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Nija. I'm also a freelance journalist. My question is directed at all the 3 observer missions. Considering that Zimbabwe's population is skewed to the majority of the people live in rural communities, I'm curious to find out because from the presentations that I got, the reports that I got, there's no clear indication in terms of just the percentage of the coverage of the observer missions in rural communities. I want to find out, because what we see with observer missions is they fixate themselves with urban centers, but the realities of the people who live in far to reach communities, did these observer missions, were they able to get to those communities so that they can engage the realities of these people as they cast their vote? Also the other realities of intimidation and so on and so forth. What is the reality that they faced out there in the rural communities, notwithstanding the work that they usually do in urban centers?
I think it's clear. Number 3 at the back there. Please take the mic to the back.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. My name is Charles. I am the National Election Agent of the Citizen Coalition for Change political party. My question is to all the missions that are here. Now, you have acknowledged in your reports that prior to the election, you were given assurances by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission that everything was in order and ready for the election. But as we all know, and as it turned out on election day, everything was not in order on election day. Now, the delays in voting, the insufficiency of the ballot papers. Now, the question now is there still any reason or basis for the missions to trust and have confidence that the result management is going to be transparent, is going to be correct and honest, given the context of the previous misinformation? Now, are we going to have proper results announced? Do you still have confidence that this will happen? The collation, the verification, the transmission of the results, and the announcement. That is my question.
Thank you very much, sir. Your Excellencies, the high table, there are 3 questions for all the heads of missions, together with their teams. Please indicate who's responding first. You will respond from your seats. Your Excellency, head of the AU mission. AU COMESA.
Okay, thank you so much. This first round of questions, we have 3 questions. So the first one has to do with the election environment. And it's similar to the third one, but the freelance journalists wanted to know whether, since we all say that the security situation was calm, can we now say that elections are credible? So when you are observing elections, the observation of the election is very important. I always give the example that somebody can read the election even before the election day. And it happens in some countries where probably somebody has an interest, and that somebody that has an interest has access to those who register the voters. And if you know your opponent's area, you're voting, you know the areas where the support base are strong and if the voting strength is strong, and you manipulate the process to under-register those people. This will happen months before the election. You have already rigged the election. So that what we comment, we look at the pre-election, the election day activities per se, and processes after the election. something that is a bit common in Africa, and common in the sense that it brings a lot of tension, is that the voting can go on very peacefully. But the process of processing the election, I think the yearly results taken to the next center, you count and taken to the next center, some countries have up to 4 levels of addition. That process of managing the election to the point to be announced for presidential election could be manipulated, and sometimes you don't even know. I don't want to mention countries in there, but I'll give you some examples. There are some countries where you are not even expected to accompany the results at the polling point. After voting, you will be there, they will count, and the electoral management body will just take and you are not expected to even follow. And at the same time, you are not even going to challenge the process of presidential election for that particular country. Anything can happen, but I'm not saying things don't happen. So we cannot use our statement that look on the election day and few days leading to the election that we're here, that the environment was peaceful. Everybody, there is labeling. We met with other observers. Nobody said that there were crises. There were no crises in the field. We didn't observe. But that doesn't mean we can just give 100% credibility. You may not know what will happen the following day. It's just like the other question that the third person asked, that the ZEC, Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, assured us that they were ready for the election. They were about about 98% ready. About 98%. The assumption is that materials have gotten to all the areas where they're supposed to store the materials and move to that place, either with the police or branches of banks and things like that. But because that 2% caused a lot of problems and led to delay in so many words that elections have to be extended from one day. So you cannot, that's why we release our statements in phases. First, and we call it preliminary. Then subsequent releases will be based on how we monitor, how they manage the results, and so on and so forth. So we cannot, in all honesty, say that yes, we said the environment was peaceful, so everything about the election is 100%. We cannot say so. We are still monitoring. The second person asks about the majority of the citizens living in the rural area. I don't know whether you base on the census results, because sometimes it's an assumption. Because Zimbabwe is highly organized. We know there are a lot of farmers, but most of these farmers also live in the urban areas, Harare, Bulawayo, and the provincial headquarters. These are all urban areas. So when we say urban areas, it's not just about Harare and Bulawayo. All the 10 provinces, their capitals are classified as urban. Some of them, you get there, you look a bit rural, but they are classified as urban areas. And I specifically asked them when our field officers were briefing us, in terms of the delay, because the greatest concern we had in the election on the 23rd was non-availability of materials for the voting. And I especially asked whether those of them who cover some of the rural areas, whether they observed non-availability of voting materials, and they said no. So the problem was more of the urban than even the rural. So, but I agree with you. Sometimes you may overlook certain things, and it's difficult. Though Zimbabwe is an easier environment to manage. It's like my country where you have people living in isolated swamps in the riverine areas. It's difficult for observer mission to send people to all the rural communities, but we cover reasonably well, and all the provincial headquarters were classified as urban. So I think we're covered. So we have an idea that what happens also in the rural areas. I think then the third question, which I trust the member of the Triple C party wanted to ask whether, comparing what the ZEC told us, that they were 98% ready 2 days before the election. Then on that election day, we realized that they were not quite 98% ready. Because so many words from their own report itself. From the statement they issued, that was in Harare area, only 23% polling units voted. Only 23% from their own report. In Bulawayo, they didn't give report for 7 a.m., but they gave report for 9:30, 9:15 or 9:30 a.m. As at 9:30, 9:15, only 75% places that the voting took place. So that is from their report, not from our own observers. So it shows clearly that there were issues in terms of the voting materials. But and you want to know whether because of that, like, okay, the statement they give us either, some people will say the statement was untrue, or some people will say it was a lie. And you now ask us to use that one to judge whether we have confidence in the results that they will bring out. That I don't know what my colleagues do, because we agree that everybody will comment on the trade based on his own perspective. So I'm not commenting on behalf of everybody. I, on my own, I cannot say that because there are some lapses in terms of election materials, not getting to that I will use that to say elections as a result will be manipulated, or they will not be in position to give credible results. I cannot. I don't think it would be fair to them. They may have logistics issues, and we should deal with the situation as it is. I'm not also saying, I'm not in position to guarantee that whatever result they will release will be 100% accurate. I'm not saying so, but we believe and we hope that delay should not affect the outcome of the results. Thank you. Let me pass on to SADC.
Thank you, Excellency. I think we will take the position of AUEOM COMESA on the first question in terms of can we immediately confirm that these elections were credible. I think in the manner in which the President has explained it helps all of us to appreciate the fact that the reports we have given today have done something. First of all, we have not been shy to mention to the Zimbabwean people and to the international community that all of us agree that we saw calmness and peace, towards the election and even during the election day. We voted, the people of Zimbabwe voted on the 23rd and 24th. We witnessed there, and our report stipulates each area, whether it was voters' roll, whether it was the ballots, whether it was the security. We have articulated our position in view of what we observed. But it's too early for us to say it was not credible. It's credible because the process is not finished. The election results are not even out yet. And like the President has said, you may raise your hand today and say, we are done and dusted and it was credible. Then tomorrow, you just get a shock of your life that everything is reversed in one action. So I think let's be fair with ourselves that question maybe is coming too far ahead. As SADC has guidelines and principles that we use to assess an election process. And SADC is clear today in our report. We have stated our position as to whether, everything was in place according to our standards and guidelines. And our conclusion directly deals with our position on that. And if you look at our conclusion, it will speak to you on that issue. On the question of, do we go into the villages or we just restrict ourselves to the urban areas? I think that the goodness of having a multiplicity of observer missions is that some of them have greater capacity than others. Those who have greater capacity are going to obviously go into more areas of the country, and others may not go as far, but everyone is observing, and that's why we do it together, because where AU went, probably we didn't go. Where SADC went, probably they didn't go. And generally we can bring the general feeling from across the country by bringing all these areas together in our reports. So I think, we have done our best as COMESA. We've been to all the 10 provinces. Did we go to every village? No, we didn't. But there were people there in those areas as well where we didn't go. The last one, yes, ZEC promised us in this very hall that they were ready for this election. And that really brought a lot of happiness to all of us. But life happens. life happens like it happened on the 23rd, that what they promised us did not come to pass. Obviously, you noticed the uneasiness, the discomfort that brought along. Our responsibility as observers is simply to observe as to what kind of impact is that kind of situation going to have on the outcome of this election. And I think that's why we have been observing. And the rest of the concerns, we have raised them in our reports, and we have addressed the issues of ZEC directly in all of our reports. So I think that ZEC, it remains for them to assess what we have said, and the Zimbabwean people to make up their minds based on what we observed and what we think about the failure of ZEC to live up to their promise. But again, all that is in our reports. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. I will now. Apologies, ECF has a response as well.
Thank you. The first question was about the credibility of elections. And we honestly align ourselves to the comment made by AU and SADC in the sense that election is not an event that happened on the 23rd or 24th of August. It is a process. And being a process, up to now, our statements, as you have listened to them, we are talking about what we saw on those days. And importantly, what we have seen is the peaceful way in which the voters had displayed themselves. So as time goes on in the process, because we are still not yet in the final stage of the election, then it's then when now we have concretized and complete everything. Yes, we can come up with those words like credible and so on and so forth. On the deployment, that's correct that ECF-SADC, because we were a small contingent on the observation, a group of 38 people in such a vast country like Zimbabwe wouldn't even think of deploying people. We managed only to deploy small teams in about 5 provinces. And again, taking the time that we have arrived, it wouldn't be possible to extend our deployment to the far, far rural area. But as it has been said, we are a joint team. Some observer groups that came earlier with long-term observation, they have managed to reach to the furthest corner of the country. On the election management by ZEC, on the result management by ZEC, ECF-SADC has employed ZEC to issue regular updates on the progress related to the result up until the announcement. So that will assist and bring confidence of the public to the public trust and confidence to ZEC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. Members of the media, you will appreciate that all the missions represented here will still do their post-election, and their final reports will be released. As we do the post-election, our offices also remain open in case you want to reach out to the mission leadership. We will take now the last three questions. 1, 2, 3. I'll urge you to be the 4th one, then that marks the end of the question and answer session.
Thank you very much. My name is Andy Hodges from ZTN Prime. My question is for the head of mission for SADC, Dr. Evans Mumba. Dr. Mumba, I really want to focus on one line in particular that you mentioned in your report. Yes, I do appreciate that you will be doing your final report, your final, of course, observer report. However, the comments that you made are things that can't possibly change in your report. You said in some aspects of the harmonized election fell short of the requirements of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the Electoral Act, and the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections 2021. Now, I'm assuming if you make a statement in this, it's impossible really for that to change in your final report because these are definite statements. Maybe you could briefly highlight to us the issues that this statement falls under. What requirements of the Constitution of Zimbabwe were not met, the Electoral Act were not met, and of course SADC principles and guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Achilles Ngoma. I'm with Women in Politics Support Unit. My question is directed to the SADC forums of the EMBs. From the statement that you read out in regards to women, you seem to restrict yourself to the questions arising out of the special seats. Will this, and you indicated that this was preliminary. My question is, would you be having any remarks in relation to the direct election seats? In other words, the 210 constituencies and the 1,970 direct election seats at ward level for women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question number 3 here.
Patrick Nija, I'm a freelancer. This question is directed at Dr. Nevers. It's directed at Dr. Nevers Mumba. 2 days ago, the local daily, the Herald, accused you of, to quote them, you're gravitating towards the opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa of the Triple C, whom they said you accompanied to Kwazana, where he was casting his vote. And there's also been an accusation that you were hobnobbing with the Western observer missions who are accused of having a preconceived idea of the outcome of the elections. What is your take on that? And maybe your response to this escaped me, or the SADC observer mission's response to this escaped me, but I didn't get it. And why didn't you respond?
My name is Victor Tawasika, I'm a freelancer. My question was, I listened to the reports and they were saying their observers didn't encounter like incidents of campaigning on the election day. But I came across and I saw on social media, there were flyers of which were designed in the colors of the opposition party, which were encouraging people not to vote. They were cast across Harare, mainly near the polling stations. So I wanted to ask if their observers didn't come across those stuff, or if it's not like a part of campaigning. I don't know which part, but they were stopping people to vote. And my last, just in cohesion with my question is that first they were saying, since it was mainly located in rural areas, and if you check the results when they're coming, there are large numbers in rural areas, maybe to a certain party. So can we really say those people voted freely or they were intimidated? Can we really accept those results from rural areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The head of ECF-SADC has only one question. Maybe I should start with you, then from there we go to the head of the SEOM mission. ECF is only one question for him. Yes, PCF is only one question for you.
Thank you. It is correct that we concentrated more on the special quota seats for women and youth. This is the preliminary report, and we have acknowledged the aspects of women and youth seats as a progressive move. The final report will expand on the inclusive and gender aspect in the electoral process, so it will address all other aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Head of SEOM. Head of SEOM, there are a few questions on your table.
Thank you. Thank you so much, moderator. Let me straight go into the first one by Andy about the provisions that we should quote as the ones that have not been met, which have fallen short within the Constitution of Zimbabwe. I think that my presentation was extremely thorough today. I'm not trying to say anything, but you noticed how much we worked hard to go into the Constitution when we were raising issues, whether it was on the roll, or whether it was on the ballots, whether it was on any subject that I touched. I referred to the Constitution of Zimbabwe, and the provisions are there, and we'll make sure you get a copy of our speech, and you can sit down and make sure that you read the provisions that we have outlined and how we believe that they have been maybe not fully honored in the manner that the Constitution demands. The easier one is that of what we represent. We are SADC. Zimbabwe is a signatory to the SADC protocols. All of us in the SADC understand the guidelines according to our little booklet, which is this one, which has the SADC principles and guidelines on elections. All of us subscribe to this. So the job of this mission is very easy. We take all the issues that we have raised in our report and judge them against our own principles. And our statement in our conclusion makes it clear that not everything, but we actually are very clear to say that, however, for reasons outlined above, the mission noted that some aspects of these regulations and the Constitution of Zimbabwe have not been met as is expected of any nation which is, subscribes to SADC. So if we didn't say that, we'll be lying and we'll be creating a totally wrong perception about SADC. We think that there are many things that should have been done in the way that we prescribe for ourselves, and they were not done. So even that is also quoted. The guidelines are also quoted in my speech. And so those that are breached are quoted, and I think you can help yourself with that. Okay. The other one is, you asked us, let me start with your second question concerning the accusation against SADC that we escorted candidate Chamisa to go and vote. First of all, let me say the reason we did not comment or answer it, we laughed about it because it is totally, it's a ridiculous statement. We come here to observe every participant. Just a day before, we were with President Mnangagwa, and we went through many things there. And before then, the first group we met was Mr. Mpofu, the Secretary General of ZANU-PF, with his entire team. And we exchanged ideas. So if you take a picture with me and Mr. Mpofu and you support CCC, then you create a story. He has been, he's favoring ZANU-PF. Then you don't understand the role of observers. If we don't go where he is, how will we observe? Observing means you are seeing. So we went to see, but we did not go with him. That was the naughtiness of that story. And that is why we did not answer it. Somebody decided to say, we went with him. No, we didn't. We were at that polling station when Mr. Chamisa came. We made no contact with him. We didn't speak with him. We were observing from far. He left without any eye contact. And if that is wrong, then why are we here? Why do we come here and put on these jackets if we are not supposed to see what these people are doing? What if he had been beaten there, or he claims that they didn't allow him to vote? How do we know? How do we stand by that if we never observe? So I think that is, we felt, sorry for using this word, we felt it was a cheap article, which might have had a reason behind it. That's really what we say. And let me be clear, this country is Zimbabwe. And I hope this doesn't get me into trouble again. This is where President Mugabe comes from. A man that really explained to us in the region what it means to be nationalistic. We don't do these elections, and we need to get that out of our minds. This thing going around that you are West or East. Some of us, and the SADC principles, we don't do these elections for the West or for the East. We do them for ourselves. And if we are not original in the manner we're doing these elections, we always point at each other, you are with your West. When they're voting in America, do they say we are on Africa's side or we are on Asia's side? They just vote on their side. And so I think let's get away from that and concentrate on what is our interest as Africa, as Africans, and as we vote. Let's not always say we are doing it for this one or for that one. Let's do it for ourselves. I thought it was important for me to clear that. I didn't want to talk about it, but you started it. That's why I have decided to answer it. No, sir. We were basically doing our job for which we were sent by our bosses from Botswana to make sure that we do the right thing. There's another question about the flyers. Yes. Yeah, we had. We saw the flyers. All we can say ourselves is that it's unfortunate. We've taken note of that, and we are anticipating or expecting, that Zimbabwe itself and the security wings must investigate and find out who is behind that, because I think that affects the electoral process. Some people pick it up, read it, and believe the message that was there, and they don't go and vote. And that is really interfering with the electoral process. So we are demanding that the security wings of Zimbabwe must investigate and find out who is responsible for that, and take them to task. And, if that in any way would have affected the election, I think that is too early to tell. I think let's just say that we have condemned that, and I think it's a desperate move by whosoever did it. I think I'm done for unless one of my colleagues wants to answer a question.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let's allow His Excellency AUEOM COMESA to respond. Thank you very much.
Okay, of course, thank you so much. No question was actually directed at me. My good friend. But the first one that none of us probably may have the comment is this person raised the issue of flyers. But I categorize it as something like campaigns, just like activities of the fast people, which were condemned in our reports. And these activities must be made criminal offenses in the country. Because election campaigns normally stop 24 hours before the election. And on that election day, you are not even expected to wear the vest of your political party. In some cases, if you wear the vest of your political party to go and vote, when the matter goes to court, they will show that you were campaigning in the election. So I think we discussed this thing with the key stakeholders, including the president of the country, and that we felt that the idea of 200 meters radius, because the law for now said that it's just election campaigns is stop 24 hours before the election. But the law again said that the ZEC can only control 200 meters radius. That after 200 meters radius, you can do some kind of things that are not expected. To me, the law that stops campaign must also prohibit any political activity in whatever form, whether flyers or flags or people putting tables and checking vote, whether their members are voting. No, that election day is apolitical. Everybody just go there as an individual, vote and go. And so that's what we also included in our own recommendation. Then the other one is, though it was not directed at me, but I was surprised when the SADC head of observation mission was accused of going with a particular candidate to vote. And because I've been observing a number of elections, let me tell the public, we all do that. If any of the presidential candidates, we know where I did not observe any, because none of them voted around that my team. But normally, when we observe elections, if we know that a key political figure, especially the presidential candidates, or provincial governors and so on, depending on the country, are going to vote, we normally go and observe what happens in that voting unit. Because that voting unit becomes a unit of interest. Because any senior, for example, where I would vote, people will feel that I will do everything to win that my voting unit. So even in my country, where all the observers will go and be waiting for me, everybody wants to see me vote before they will leave. So that is normal, and all of the other nations do. So it's not only the SADC. And the issue that this accusation sometimes comes that a leader of observation team is following this or following this. At least we must be a bit careful. Because when we go to a country to observe elections, we interact with everybody, local and international. We interact with everybody. That if you see me interacting with somebody who comes from outside Africa or outside SADC zone, that's nothing to compromise my interest. We share information. We also try to get information. They also give us information. And these informations we get from everybody help us to do engage the people we need to engage in terms of mediation and in terms of getting some useful information. Because election observation missions interact with everybody, every stakeholder that you can, to get the information you need to assess the credibility of the electoral process, and so on and so forth. So please let us not just accuse people anyhow. Take time to find out whether what you suspect is correct or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. This brings us to the end of the Q&A. We appreciate the questions that we received from the media and the responses from the high table here. I have few announcements to make. One is that all the statements from the missions, you'll find them when you get out of the door. All the statements of the missions, when you leave, they're just outside. Secondly, the SEOM mission is inviting you for lunch. It is available now in Jacaranda 1 and 2 in M1 floor. From the reception, you take M1 floor, you go up to the lunch area. And the